I love when it works so easily. Hello. We were so easy about this, right? We're becoming like little bit pros at this kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I'm here with Cassandra. Tell me how to say your last name because I was like still doubt if it's Vitale or Vital. Like, how do you say it?
I usually say like Vitale or Vitale.
Vitale.
Yeah.
Oh,
My grandma was added the hard I, like Vitale, like vitality, which I like. But
ooh.
Vitale, I think Vitale is kind of like maybe the more traditional way that you'd say it, but either one is good with me.
Yeah. And on that note, just kind of curious, what is like your ethnic background and such? Sorry, I have planes going by.
My background is half Italian and half Irish. Half Italian, half Irish.
Half Italian, half Irish. Yeah.
Yeah, my mom is Irish, and I think there's a little bit of French in there. I found out,
Okay.
and that is pretty much Italian through and through.
Yeah, yeah. And I have some Irish and some English and some Native American in me. But I have a friend, and I feel like this is interesting to talk about, right? Because I talked to you in advance that in our is our yoga working query here,
Yeah.
and as you asked me, and I continue to ask me, what do I mean by this? Um, yes, part of it is looking at our own personal self care, personal
Oh, where'd she go? There she is.
kinds of things that we're doing in the name that we might call yoga. Is
Yeah.
it working in, is it how is it playing into how we're feeling, how we're showing up in the world, um, what sorts of energy we have to be towards helping and solutions, if it can be about that. But also that I was hoping we could touch on this idea too of is our yoga working in the awareness of the recent and long going Black Lives Matter movement and just the awareness that so many of us are in, right?
Sure.
That's one of the reasons I asked you right away to be part of this because I would love to talk about that too. So it feels appropriate for us to talk about our ethnicity and background, right, as part of that conversation, just because I love my friend Martine, who is Mexican American, says, we're all people of color. Really, like he says, what are you, invisible? You're not a color, you know? And I feel like that's kind of an interesting conversation, even though I'm really wanting to honor, right, that the people who are of the darker colors, right, we can say that respectfully, have definitely had a much different experience and still continue to. Right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We can't
So,
discount, of course.
yeah. And I feel like and you have been such a leader in our local community and online, and so like you're an international teacher nowadays, even before the Zoom leap that you and your studio have made so gracefully. But yeah, how can we make sure our yoga is not just for the privilege and for the white, and not just serving those factors in so many ways, right? So I know you're interested in that as well.
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
Yes.
when I very first started yoga, I was really, really interested in how can I'm still interested in this. I think the journey now, it's become the journey, of course, but making yoga accessible to people who don't have money, people whose bodies are not what you'd expect a yoga body to be, for example, or
Mm.
to old people, to children, to making yoga available to any type of person. That's always been a passion of mine. That's always something that really matters to me. And that's definitely one reason why Freespirit Yoga has always had the brand that Freespirit has, which is really like, come one, come all. Like you can be a normal person and get to do yoga.
Mm.
You
Mm.
don't necessarily be a sexy athlete, which we welcome those people as well. Of course, it's anybody. So that's part of what's always been my mission, and extending that more intentionally to, like you said, people of color or communities of color, people who are in a community that is marginalized or disenfranchised, whatever it
Yeah.
is,
Better words. Yeah. Yeah.
making it available to them too. At part of the struggle, I think, for us as instructors has been, how do we have our lives work
Right.
and give
Right.
yoga a way
Mm-hmm.
other people. So that's what I mean by like I'm in the journey now of how do I have myself in a secure place so that I can then give to the world in that way, or offer things to people who can't necessarily give back to me financially.
Yes, that's such a great point to bring up, because that's been kind of this classic stereotype of the yogi spiritual person is if they do become about service, almost doing it in a way that they're not able to support themselves enough to actually be of help, right? That they're still kind of so caught up in their own struggle, right? Just even they're
Yeah,
thinking about their own survival. So that hasn't worked either. So
I've
I think
been
that's an interesting edge to bring up too.
yeah.
Yeah. And I've realized how really appropriate it is to get to talk to you about this, because as Free Spirit Yoga is one of the places that I've gotten to be a part of, I've seen absolutely over all the yoga studios I've been a part of over 20 years, it does have this really welcoming feel, and this very multi race, multicultural
Yeah,
blend of people coming to the classes, right? And so
yeah,
somehow you have allowed that at your studio, that it's a place where it's actually happening. And yeah, and you do have kids coming there and elders, and that you've created that, yeah, is, and that you're like a modern version of that.
well,
Yeah,
I would say that
you're exploring it, yeah, at least.
I don't know if I created it, but I think I definitely, have been the captain of the Free Spirit Yoga ship, and that's
Mm,
the intention, that to continue that Free Spirit. To me, I've been a part of the studio for longer than I've been in charge of it. Has
yeah.
always been like that
Okay, yeah.
in a lot of
So
ways.
that really started, that's like you said, with the brand, with, was it Andrea? Was that her
Yeah,
name?
Andrea
You started
Testa,
that? Yeah.
a real estate agent now.
Uh,
And then Veronica Silva was in charge of it for 5 years. And I would say maybe some of the things that I've put in have highlighted certain populations in different ways. Like I love working with veterans, or,
uh,
you know, um, I have extended yoga to people of color in a different way, like scholarships and different, in maybe a more intentional way. But other than that, I mean, the course itself, Free Spirit Yoga is her own being. She's
uh,
an entity. And so I think she's kind of she brings the people to her.
I'm so glad that we're getting to talk about this too, because I know now you're online,
Yeah,
right? And really, so it
completely.
it makes sense for people if they think they have online options, why they would choose certain options, right? And that Free Spirit Yoga, her own energy, has always been that and continues to be that. Yeah, so that's beautiful. And that other yoga studios could look to that for leadership, right? Because sometimes it can feel a little bit of like a disconnect with the way it's expressed, right?
Yeah,
Um,
totally. I sometimes take classes. One of my favorite instructors lives in Hollywood, and they teach out of a studio that has 3 locations in LA. And they're also a really diverse place. They've got lots of different types of teachers on the schedule, which really matters to me.
uh,
It's always mattered to me, and they do it too. So I mean, I think that it's becoming, at least here in Los Angeles, where we are so diverse, it's becoming more of an intention of like, let's hire teachers who are Black. Let's hire
mhm,
Latino. Let's hire different types of, like, give them
mhm.
so as an ally, or as a white person, or as whatever it is we want to call ourselves. I have this opportunity. I have an employment opportunity. Like, who do I want to highlight? I want to uphold this voice, right? So I can, sure. So I'll do it.
Yeah. And I would imagine there aren't a lot of like bilingual or other language spoken classes out there, but I could see Free Spirit offering that kind of thing. Do you think that there's a market for that? If there is like, I mean, I'm sure there are teachers out there who could teach it, say
I
in Spanish or other languages,
I think there's
right?
for sure a market for that. I'm not sure that I have figured out how to reach that market, or
Yeah,
that
I know, right? That's the interesting thing, is to like how
classes.
to really make it accessible, even as you already have. And I guess it's just about um, somewhere between word of mouth and yeah, that's part of the thinking too, huh? How
Yeah,
to
we
help
heard
people become aware.
Spanish at the studio before, years ago.
Okay. Yeah.
And you know, there's always like one or two people who are like, "Yay, I'm so excited," and they come to class. But
Right.
for whatever reason, it didn't pick up.
Yeah. It's about how to let the people know who aren't there because they, maybe aren't speaking English strongly enough.
Right.
Um, yeah. Well, okay. So now I feel like, if you don't mind, as you brought up one of your favorite teachers, and part of what I do feel like I want to look at with the yoga is our yoga working conversation. One of my favorite teachers, Eric Schiffman, who I think Andrea, I believe, loved him too. I remember that I saw that she was, I don't know if you've ever encountered him, but he's one of those classic yoga teachers that's been in LA for like 40 years. But he's someone who really got me seeing how our yoga, like you and I both talked about, really meaning union, right? In the ways, the deep connecting, yes, spiritual ways. Is our yoga working in that? Like, he would talk about how, if we're really getting into, I think he wouldn't say it, but I would say, like, a maybe a namaste perspective of like, I am this, you are that, and really feeling that connection, that we'd be out in the world looking at every other human and being like, brother, sister.
Yeah.
And that was, he would include that in his classes. And to me, that just struck it like, whoo. So if our yoga is working, potentially we could be in that awareness, right? And that's part of my wondering, is like, and really my question is, how can we make sure our yoga is working towards that? Because don't you feel like that's really a lot of what yoga was built for?
Um, it's self-care is not the end all be all. It's self-care to community care. That's what what's the point of sitting in a room doing these exercises, doing these breathing in order to just make ourselves feel better? Sure, that's not a bad thing. Like, okay, now I feel good. To me, and this is something that Fabian and I have talked about a lot, and this is really important to us, is that it's not just for self, it's for world, it's for community. It's, I'm going and doing this work, of course, to take care of myself, but it's really so that I can then share it, so I can then radiate it, so I can then bring it out into the world and have that ripple effect occur. That's what self-care is for.
Yeah, right. And I think that's, to me, I feel like that's maybe the message I want all of us, myself too, to keep in mind, that this was always supposed to be about how it's going to affect our ability to show up in the world. And
Yeah.
yes, it's amazing that it can help us heal our trauma and drama, and even do that for our lineages and all that, which is so cool. And I'm super into,
Yeah.
but yeah, that it's not about being an escape from the world, right? Or a disconnect. And how can we make sure it's not that? I feel like I'm interested in that conversation.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I always have to check myself when I get too attached to any of my practices. And one way that I know that I'm too attached to it, or that I'm having a maybe unhealthy relationship with it, is when I have to miss it for whatever reason. And then I feel guilty for some reason, like make mistakes to miss or skip a day. How guilty do I feel about that? And then what is the process that I have to take myself through in order to deal with whatever emotions arise with me not fulfilling this rule that I created for my own self in order to practice my practice or whatever I'm doing. Like that attachment that we have then to our practice, to me, that's gauges. Like, oh, I'm having an attachment to this practice. That's not necessarily healthy either.
Yeah.
It's okay to skip a day. We have a commitment to ourselves. Get back on the horse, the next day, whatever it is, whenever you're ready to do that practice again. I think that's one way to get in.
I think that's such a great thing to bring up. Yeah, right. Because we can so often get in that drama with ourselves, and then really, like, everything about where we're putting our energy and attention in a day. If now half the day we're thinking about or beating ourselves up for the fact that we didn't do our whatever, then we're, again, even less available to others. So that's an interesting point to bring up, that we could get a little dependent and just, we don't want to be so like, again, I'm not trying to come from a place of judgment, because I feel like that's at the heart of all these practices, is the spirit of non-judgment, right? So, but maybe discernment and, and I guess it's about just checking ourselves. That's really the thing too. Like, it's not about, we can't look at anyone else and judge where they're at, because you don't know where they're at. Maybe they're in the middle of healing, and probably they are. Often we are, right?
We all are.
Feeling big stuff, right?
We know it or not, I think.
Yeah, right. So that's the thing too, is I think to be even in the energy to be in less judgment with ourselves and others is an aspect of our yoga working.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I don't know if it was even a meme or if it's a real quote. It might be a real quote that got turned into a meme. Someone said, the way to know that if your yoga is working is if your life is working.
Mm. There it is. I mean, yeah. And not to mean, right, that we won't have challenges, right? As I know you're so good at like coaching people through the beauty of that.
There's always challenges. It's just a matter of, how we're looking at the challenge and then how we're being about the challenge. And we don't even have to call it a challenge. We could call it an opportunity or a gift or whatever we want to call it. But how I think in the West, especially, we focus a lot on relationships, and I think that's great. And yoga, we focus on the relationship with ourselves, with our community, with our world, and one way to know is our yoga working is like, are our relationships better? Are we more connected to the people around us?
Wow.
Are we having those conversations that support our heart and support our friend's heart or our family member? Or do we feel complete with family members? Like, let's say something terrible happened. Have we said everything that we, really need to say to people so that they know that we love them and care about them? Or what's that intimacy level? Like, where are we with our comfort of intimacy? And I think our practice of yoga relates to that. How intimate can we get with ourselves? How honest and real can we be with ourselves? And then can we also extend that out into our partners and our brothers and sisters, and literal brothers and sisters, or, friend brothers and sisters, whoever is in our life.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, like, interestingly, I've found for a while, it's kind of fun to see that if yoga means to connect or to join or union, right, that often if we're not feeling good or we're out of sorts, the answer could be, like, we're feeling disconnected, the answer could be more connection, right? More union. So interestingly, the answer to is our yoga working? If we feel like it's not, it could mean about they're needing, like, we might choose to create more yoga, experience more yoga, allow more yoga, union as the answer, right? To help it work more. But that's where that's so personal, right? Like what creates that experience of yoga union for each person?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doing yoga asana, it might be something else.
What do you feel like are some of your favorite current ways to, like, find and create and get into practice your yoga right these days lately?
Well, exercise. I love physical hard exercise.
Yeah.
Push-ups.
Something getting you in the body. Yep. And more strength. Do you feel like the more challenging has, like, an interesting different focus? Is that part of it for you? Yeah. I noticed that too when I play with that kind of thing. Yeah.
There's a part of me that does not want to be uncomfortable. And so pushing myself into those places physically, a physical discomfort, not pain, but, making my muscles work harder, feeling that burn, getting my heart rate up to the point where I have to figure out how to breathe better.
Yeah,
all of that is a union. I mean, I'm so inside my body, I can't think about all the drama or whatever else is in my life when I'm so present in that experience. Yoga asana does that too, of course.
Yeah.
I think asana does other things for us as well. I just took a class from the teacher that I like that lives in Hollywood. And what's interesting to me more than ever about yoga is really just being so present with the different sensations, at least as far as asana goes, the body, feeling that stretch, feeling that pull, feeling what's going on in there. Oh, there's a little crack in there. There's a little glitch in my shoulder when I do this. Just feeling it and being with it. It's so simple. Yeah, it's not always easy to sit there and think, like, what's going on with my shoulder right now? That's kind of present. So I like yoga. I've been enjoying. I've been enjoying using a ball and putting my sometimes I get shoulder stuff, so I'll work all the muscles in my shoulders and chest with a ball. So a lot of physical stuff has been really, really nice for me lately, because there's a lot taking me out of my body.
Yes. That was going to be my question, because I feel like I've been in the awareness for a while that a lot of us, me too, get so in our heads, right? And it's like, I like to do anything that brings us back into the body. There's something to that. Yeah.
I always love Reiki. I always love different breathing exercises, reminding myself even throughout the day, like, some sighs. Right. So I like to weave things in. One thing that I did recently say is that I would like to get back to a more intentional, or not more intentional, just intentional seated meditation. I like some of that guy that I was posting for a little while, Damien Eccles.
Okay.
You watched his video. I posted it.
Okay, yes.
He's talking about doing all this crazy meditations where the Kabbalah, stuff like that. I love that kind of meditation, and I've done it before at Chaos Magic, and it works so well. So I think that's part of the reason why I haven't actually sat down to do it, but I want to get back to it.
Yes, right. Yeah. That's cool. So it's like seated meditation with the use of, seems like it was almost a combination of like gestures with intention and words, right? It's like so magical, which is all part of yoga, right? We know, like, I love to, like, what you could call mantra or mudra, any of that, right?
That's basically it's like with Hebrew words.
Yeah, it's just use of word and sound is what I feel like the yogis were saying with things like, and then that's where things like music and sound and lyrics, and there's so many ways that we can experience the yoga, which is what I love to share too. Yeah, and I love that what you brought up about coming into the body too, how anything that while we do that physical practice, it is such a symbolic place for like having some time with ourselves and developing our relationship with ourselves, right? And how we're gonna work with challenge, and like a practice and a place to remember to stay as relaxed as we can and to use our breath. And I love that it's like that place to practice that, so that back in life or off the mat or off whatever sort of movement, because I've really feel like anything in the body can be a form of yoga, right? But I hear what you say too, though, that there are a lot of amazing asanas that maybe we could say come from specific yoga traditions that are like magic, right? They happen to do some extra super great cool things to the body, but really that any sort of movement, anything that brings us in the body could be serving that for us, right? A place to experience yoga or practice yoga or do yoga.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I imagine the Reiki, it's something I haven't learned about officially yet, but that's something that is such a version and a form of yoga, right? It's such a connecting experience.
Kind of meditation.
Exactly, right? And another form of meditation. I feel like it's interesting to try to describe the difference or the ways that yoga and meditation intersect, because I feel like yoga is a form of meditation and meditation's a form of yoga, right? And it's just like, and they're both so vast and broad, but how do you ever try to describe that? And I know you also do teacher training, so you have a chance to
not really. I guess I don't really think about it that much like that. Meditation, I think of as something that we're doing with our mind, but then yoga is a moving meditation where your mind is connecting to your body. And that's why I think of Reiki as being a meditation, because it really is a mind. It's a Jedi mind trick. It involves drawing pictures in your mind. And then setting an intention where you're essentially sending those pictures that are charged up with this special energy to whatever it is you want to send it to, and toward whatever intention you want to send it into. So it's all happening inside your mind, really. I mean, not necessarily all happening inside your mind, but that's where the energy starts. So, what sends it, what directs the energy.
Yeah, and such a great way to use our minds, right, and our imagination. Like, again, if we're like interested in helping the world, not that we also don't want to do things that feel even more I don't want to say practical because this is practical, or tangible because this is almost tangible, right? Or just, but this is something we can also do because we're doing a lot of other things with our minds usually, and our focus and our attention. So I think that's a piece of the yoga too, is our yoga working. That yoga, I think, is so much about attention, right? And our focus. So that's a part of how we can be checking ourselves with love.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the meditation and intention setting, that creates the foundation and holds the space and guides the energy for whatever, like you're saying, practical action, linear things where if we do X, then Y will happen. That type of thing that we do in life. We do all the practices and all the meditations first, and then we go out and start doing the actions. We'll probably be more successful. I think that's my experience.
Yeah. And I feel like I have a question for you. Because I know you also do like intuitive, how do you describe it? Like intuitive coaching of sorts? I was going to say life coaching, but I don't know if that's the word you like. What is the way you like to describe
I don't really call it life coaching, but
yeah.
if they wanted to, they could.
Yeah.
It's guidance, intuitive guidance, emotional support, kind of like a whole self-integration practice that it depends on what people want, you know.
Yeah.
I have lots of different tools that I can use to help flush out where is it we're going, what are we working on, what answers are we looking for, what questions are we asking. So I might use tarot cards, I might use astrology, I might use the talk to this person, I might use Reiki, I might use tapping if someone has something they gotta like work through. But to me, it's all like intuitive guidance and coaching.
Yeah. And you're really, I can see also continuing to facilitate their connection, union, yoga, even though, you know, we know it's so much more than what most people think of as traditional yoga. But I feel like my question is, so with those people that you get to work with, and it sounds like you do tailor it to what they're wanting. So this, I'm sure, would depend on that. But do you tend to encourage them to be building some sort of practices or looking at their self-care as part of your work with people? Does that usually come up? Not that most people probably are thinking about it anyways, but yeah, okay. As part of your prescription, if you have a prescription.
If I'm talking to somebody and they're saying that they're having trouble being present and they don't feel good, I ask them, you know, do you get enough sleep? Are you drinking enough water? Do you have an exercise practice that you like to do?
Yeah.
How much do you move around? I mean, those are the foundational things that I would definitely check in on somebody about first before anything. Like, okay, well, if you're not sleeping, or if you don't live in a home where you feel safe, or, you know, someone with really like Maslow's hierarchy, with all that stuff. And then sure, if somebody's life is really working for them, you know, they have enough money, they feel safe, they have all these things, yet maybe their relationships kind of suck and they need help with that, they're not happy there. Then that's when I would say something like, do you have a journal? Are you willing to do this emotional healing work? So it really depends on where the person is at. And then in some cases, they need more than what I can provide. I'll say, you need to go talk to a therapist. You need to go seek, you're in more of a dysfunctional space. And I am not really qualified to support you in that space. So you should go talk to someone who is, which would be to me like going to see a therapist or some sort of professional psychologist, versus I am more equipped to work with someone who's functional, but still needs help, who wants support in their life.
Yeah. And so that's beautiful too, that you're ready to connect them. There's that word connection again, with the resources or the other sorts of practitioners or therapy they might need. So, wow. Yeah. That is a cool extension of your
I want to think
ways.
Go. I don't want to take on more than what I'm capable of with somebody. That doesn't serve them. That doesn't serve anybody. So it makes more sense to me to say, I think somebody else, maybe I can guide you in this direction, you know, toward that. And then maybe eventually you come talk to me when you're feeling better.
But I think that's probably good for a lot of like yoga teachers and such to hear that that's a way to be that help to others, is to always be ready to resource them out to additional practitioners, right? Like if our yoga's working, we're not like worried about losing business or things like that. Hopefully that we can just be more in that place of connecting them, right? However we can,
I
which
mean,
I think people want to be, but sometimes when you get all businessy about things, right? You might
well,
lose.
sometimes, like you said, we are so well equipped to help people and support people, and we have a scope. We still have a scope, and if it's outside of our scope, we might feel like, oh, I can support, but I don't think it really serves to step too far outside of the scope. I don't think it's good for our integrity or for our business or for the practice itself, whether it be coaching or emotional healing work or whatever it is that we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that seems like important to come up. It's like a humility within the business, right? Because
Yeah,
yoga kind of gets a lot of worship, and it's got a lot of amazingness to it, right? And a lot of possibility. And not that you couldn't solve, quote unquote, all sorts of things through all sorts of forms of yoga.
you can. We've all seen it happen.
And yeah, and though, right? It's nice for us to be ready to support the other modalities, because honoring that everybody's so different. And
Yeah, and honoring the limitation of whatever it is that we're doing. Like yoga, I would never. Maybe when I very first started yoga 13 years ago, I would have said it's going to cure everything and it's going to solve problems and it's going to be. But years later, as much as I love it more than ever, and I feel like it's more powerful than ever, and I understand it on such a deeper level, I would never say that it's a cure-all.
Yeah.
And I think that's how to know that's another way to know that it's working, is to know how far you can go with it.
Right. To see if we're still being humble too within it. And I feel like with things like yoga, I've realized there's so much I could always learn, and I'll never learn it all even in the name of just things that are called yoga, right? Yeah. And then people are always creating and inventing, and it's expanding. So it's almost like it's this vast field that is being expressed in so many ways. So I love that.
I know. Yeah. I'm so happy that all these gymnasts and anatomists and all these other sports medicine doctors have come in and said, hey, yogis, there's some things you are doing that aren't so great. And we're like, oh, really? And then we're learning all these biomechanics and all these other really amazing, anatomy things and the nervous system in a more intentional way. And I love being, hearing all that new stuff, all the stuff coming about like the polyvagal theory and, our vagus nerve, and like there's so much cool new stuff coming in, and I get to keep my beginner's mind because I always have to learn new stuff.
Yes. And that it could be a good, piece of if our yoga is working. That I think if the original yogis maybe had some intentions, it was about things like that, being in that beginner's mind. And that means being humble, right? In that we're always learning and just honoring each person as that divine expression, right? And being open to that. So.
Yeah. Totally.
Well, is there anything else you want to say here it looks like we're towards the end of what could be our amount of time?
No, I'm good.
That was totally fun and worth it. So thank you for that and a helpful conversation.
Thanks for inviting me, LJ. I always like chatting with you. So
yes,
keeping on the conversation. It's cool.
Yeah. Well, and thank you for helping me and those of us who tune into this. Help us help our yoga work and the things that you're doing. And anything, I guess people can find you through some of the links here, but will you say Freespirit Yoga's website address or things like that for people who might want to be a part of that?
Sure. I mean, freespirityoga.com.
Mm-hmm.
And you can, if you want to come on, we've got live streaming yoga. Pretty soon we're going to roll out some pre-recorded classes, which I'll check in with you about that.
Yeah.
If you want to do a couple for us. And I'm at in August, I'm rolling out an 8-week course working with EFT tapping and the chakras to go through our entire lives, our entire body and our entire lives to clear our emotional baggage.
That sounds like good timing. The world could use more of us doing that right now, right? With love for the team, right? That's the kind of thing Yeah. And then you're starting an online yoga teacher training too, right? Because you've been doing it live for a while.
So we'll have an online yoga teacher training. You get certified. I mean, the face of the yoga teacher is changing. We've gone from 3D to 2D, right? So learning how to teach yoga over this new platform and this new paradigm. I mean, why the heck not? So that's our training is 200 hours.
And it makes sense to learn from you all you have been doing it and, figuring it out really innovatively through this all. So it makes sense. Wow, that's exciting. Well, good. I'm glad we get to link people to that. And great. Well, thanks, Cassandra. Have a good afternoon over there. Okay. Bye-bye. And thanks y'all for being here. Namaste.
Bye.